All My Sons by Arthur Miller is a play set during World War II. Joe and Kate Keller had two sons, Chris and Larry. Keller owned a manufacturing plant with Steve Deaver, and their families were close. Steve's daughter, Anne, was Larry's beau, and George was their friend. When the war came, both Keller boys and George were drafted. During the war, Keller's and Deaver's manufacturing plant had a very profitable contract with the US Army, supplying airplane parts. One morning, a shipment of defective parts came in. Under pressure from the army to keep up the output, Steve Deaver called Keller, who had not yet come into work that morning, to ask what he should do. Keller told Steve to weld the cracks in the airplane parts and ship them out. Steve was nervous about doing this alone, but Keller said that he was sick and could not go into work. Steve shipped out the defective but possibly safe parts on his own. Later, it was discovered that the defective parts caused 21 planes to crash and their pilots to die. Steve and Keller were arrested and convicted, but Keller managed to win an appeal and get his conviction overturned. He claimed that Steve did not call him and that he was completely unaware of the shipment. Keller went home free while Steve remained in jail, shunned by his family. Meanwhile, overseas Larry received word about the first conviction. Racked with shame and grief, he wrote a letter to Anne telling her that she must not wait for him. Larry then went out to fly a mission, during which he broke out of formation and crashed his plane. Killing himself, Larry was reported missing. 3 years later, Anne and Chris decide to get married. Even when George, Steve's son, goes to meet him to tell him about the marriage, after so many years, Steve is still on the belief that he is innocent. This sparks feelings of uneasiness and suspicion in the mind of George, who is now a lawyer. As the story unfolds, everything changes, and it seems that the Deaver family's arrival in the Keller household has a purpose. At the end of the play, Keller finally realizes that in the eyes of Larry, and in a symbolic moral sense, all the dead pilots were his sons. He says that he is going into the house to get a jacket, and then he will drive to the jail and turn himself in. But a moment later, a gunshot is heard. Keller has killed himself. The story is a reflection of society and how people, driven by a lust for money, can stoop to any extent to acquire wealth, even if it comes at the cost of relationships and betrays the nation.